The woman's on the phone with dispatch, and she's saying, they've got a gun. They're coming to the door. They're coming to the door with a gun. The woman had told the call taker, they put the gun down, and she didn't relay that message to the deputy. Door swings open, and it looks just like a shotgun swinging out, and this woman steps out, and he shoots and kills her.
Welcome back, viewers, watchers, listeners. I'm your host, Tyler Owen, and our co-host today is
JW.
John Wilkerson. Man, welcome back to the Blue Grits today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me here, Tyler.
Well, we have just got back from Galveston. We went down there and supported our members there at the Mardi Gras. For those that don't know, Galveston has a humongous Mardi Gras there. I think it's close to 500,000 people. And I want to say that the crowd, the law enforcement that works down there is close to 400 to 500. So if you can imagine the number of ratio to citizens versus officer ratio, that's pretty substantial. And so there's not a huge, there's not a lot of issues that happen there. And it has everything to do with the dedication that Galveston PD has, Galveston County Sheriff's Office has, state, local DPS, game wardens, OIG. I've seen everybody down there, working. And the cool thing about Galveston is they all seem to work together. It's a unique place, and so shout out to those guys for another successful Mardi Gras. We enjoyed it. We enjoyed hanging out with you guys and supporting you guys in that role. So, speaking of roles and guests, we've got a guest on today. That John Wilkerson, now that he's in legislative affairs, was a field rep and worked with this person for a very long time. Good friend of law enforcement, good friend, and quite honestly, a damn good attorney. So, intro our guest.
Yeah, so with us today we have Robert McCabe. Robert's been a longtime attorney for Tmpa. Everybody that knows our legal plan, they know that you get the attorney of your choice. And I will tell you, in Central Texas, there's back when I was taking legal calls on a routine basis, if it was a critical incident, administrative investigation, anything like that in the Central Texas area, I could pretty much count on who they're going to be asking for if they made that request, and it's going to be Robert McCabe and his law partner, Lisa Rojas.
Yeah.
When did she come on?
She came on about 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah, so I remember there for a while. It was just you that was operating there, and but yeah, he's a rock star here in Central Texas. Yep. I know I've called on him personally. Funny story that we may get into during this show, but it was over the Kempner Flaggate incident. When I had charges filed against me for allowing one of our members to change a tattered flag, and I called Robert and told him the story, and he laughed and said, "I got you." So
yeah. Well, you've done phenomenal work for us. And let's just call bullshit where bullshit needs to be called. That how can I put this delicately? It takes a special person to not only be an attorney, shameless shout out, but also be an attorney for public servants. Because for whatever reason, I don't know why this is, we put ourselves in predicaments that are just the absolutely craziest situations, sometimes. And that's not just with critical incidences where the challenges that we face. But shout out to you and thank you for representing our members here in Central Texas. And your reputation speaks volumes of who you are in that manner. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah. It's a very interesting work. Keeps me entertained for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we like to start the podcast out by saying, who the hell's Robert? Where'd you grow up? How'd you get in law school? Or how did this adventure begin?
Sure. So I grew up in Dallas. I'm 48 now. Graduated from Lake Highlands High School up there. Lived there my whole life. Went to college straight away. Went to Sam Houston State University with the idea to do criminal justice, like so many of us. Thought about a career in law enforcement. Got there and realized that I think I really want to go to law school. So pivoted away from criminal justice and got a degree in English, which is good for absolutely nothing except graduate school. Went straight to St. Mary's Law School. I referred to as St. Mary's School of Law and Refrigeration Repair. Went there in San Antonio. Miserable 3 years of law school. It's full of professors that don't know anything about the actual practice of law. It's full of students who just want to hear themselves speak, but suffer through law school for 3 years to get a piece of paper. About halfway through school, I was working in the mutual fund business. I was also working at a cigar store selling cigars, which was a great part-time job in graduate school, smoking all of my paycheck away. And legally
cigars, the legal cigars.
Right. had a friend of mine that was in law school that was working at the DA's office and said, hey, you should come work as an intern here. So why not get a third job? So I applied, got a job there in a great division with some wonderful prosecutors, and got the trial hook and decided I'm going to pivot and I'm going to do prosecution. So
what county was that?
Bexar County.
Okay,
so
cool.
Worked there as an intern for about a year and a half and passed the bar exam, got hired on the same day, and was picking a jury the same afternoon that I was sworn in as an attorney.
Damn, I guess the difference is now is that you were a successful trial lawyer then at the DA's office and
that actually prosecuted criminals.
Okay. Sorry.
It's just a strange concept to us.
It's a strange concept.
In Bexar County, I mean.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a different environment. And trial by fire, worked down there as a trial prosecutor the entire time, 4 years. Probably tried 60 jury trials, maybe more in 4 years. Had some great mentors. Loved it. Decided after a while I didn't want to stay in San Antonio, so my wife and I moved to Georgetown, where we still live, and I worked as a prosecutor at the Williamson County DA's office for 8 more years, doing nothing but felony trial work. Got board certified in criminal law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization. Decided after 8 more years of trial work that I was ready to move on, and went out and hung a shingle and opened up my own shop, and here I am.
Wow. That's
so
pretty cool.
Just real quick, can you tell are the listeners, voyeurs, viewers?
It's whatever you want to call them.
Okay.
Well, whoever watchers.
Fans.
Fans. Yeah, there you go. Fans. So explain to our fans, what does it mean to be board certified? How do you go about getting that?
So all lawyers in the state are licensed to practice law, and that's just your general license to practice. The Texas Board of Legal Specialization has been around since the 70s, and it's basically about 4% or less of all attorneys in the state are board certified in a specialty area like criminal law. It means that you have tried a certain amount of trials and appeals and cases, and that you've been recommended by judges and peers, and then you have to sit for an extensive exam in just a certain specialty area. So there's not too many of us that are board certified in criminal law, but it's just a special certificate of competency is what they call it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That says a lot then.
It does.
Yeah. I didn't know that. I'm glad you touched on
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
You pointed that out.
I touched that, not Robert.
Yeah. Keep your hands on the desk.
So now here I am 11 years later, and we do a blend of criminal defense and obviously administrative work for Tmpa, and that's my favorite kind of work.
Yeah. And so for the fans out there that don't understand kind of Robert's role, again, I say this all the time for people that are listening. Our bread and butter with Tmpa is our legal service. We have far superior legal service than most out there. And so let's just say hypothetically that a member calls in and says, "Hey, I've been involved in a shooting," and we immediately go into protection mode. And let me kind of paint the picture of, we're immediately asking, "Hey, is your body cam on? Is your in-car on?" Because we don't want to jeopardize your defense if there happens to be one. And then we get the basic necessity information of where you are, verify that your membership with Tmpa is active, and then we call and contact an attorney. And so Robert's area would be, it'd be probably from Waco down to south of Austin over to as far west as Johnson City,
Llano,
yeah.
And then even as far as east as College Station, probably.
Yeah.
Because you have to think, we have a 2-hour window that we guarantee that an attorney will be by your side in a critical incident. So we generally know, and field reps to take legal calls, you and I have done it for years. We generally know who to call on in those areas for the quick response. And so once Robert's kind of getting the phone call, he'll make the judgment call, because this is something else that's kind of misperceived, is that sometimes, and majority of the times, and you may want to touch on this, years ago, what would you guess, Robert? 90% of the officer-involved shootings in Texas are probably investigated by the Texas Rangers because it's an outside entity?
I think that's accurate. Yeah.
Okay. And so with that being said, years ago, DPS, the Ranger Division, wanted the officers involved to conduct the walkthrough and conduct a very preliminary interview that day. And so it would be imperative for the attorney to show up at that time. It seems like that we, as in a profession, which I agree with, that we're trying to transition over to a 72-hour window because you haven't had the thought process, and so you may not you may be assisting a member in a critical incident of a shooting, but not necessarily show up to the scene because it's not necessary. The member has been removed from the scene, but you may go out after the fact and look at it while they're still there. So kind of talk about critical incident response real quick, and then we'll dive off in other stuff that you've been involved in.
Sure, you're right. The very first, most important thing is I ask them, hey, are you recording? Are you somewhere where you can step away? While I'm driving, I'm talking to them on the phone already to find out where are you at, where are you going to be. Sometimes, about half the time, they'll still be on scene when I get there. About half the time, they would have been removed back to the police station is typical. I'll meet them wherever they're at. I tell them, look, the only thing a supervisor should be asking you are the public safety questions, the things that we know about, the direction you fired, approximately how many times you fired, what weapons you used, where witnesses might be located, where evidence might be located. Are there bad guys that are on the loose? Is anyone injured? That's pretty much it. We shouldn't be talking about the most important question in Chapter 9 of the Penal Code, which is the why. Why did you fire your weapon? We're not going to get into specifics. So those are the only things that responding supervisors or crime scene folks need to know. Other than that, I tell my members, go lock yourself in a car, get your battle buddy, or go back to the PD and I'll find you. That's it. My experience is that Rangers always want to do a round count. Let's assume you fired your duty weapon, right? Which is normal. They want to photograph the weapon. They want to take the weapon. And they want to photograph the member as they appeared. It's important because if you shoot at or shoot a bad guy and they live, they'll come up with a defense like, well, I didn't know it was the cops. So we want to make sure that police officer is photographed as they appeared at that time. There's no doubt of what their uniform looked like and that they were clearly presenting themselves as a peace officer. As far as a walkthrough, it really depends on the ranger. I think that if there is a walkthrough, it is no more information than what we already discussed, which is just approximately where were you standing, what did you see and where, and what direction did you fire your weapon. I won't allow questions beyond that, and I think that's the limit. A lot of times these officers, sometimes these shootings happen at the end of a shift. Sometimes they've been on duty for 11 hours, 12 hours when a shooting happens. By the time the Rangers get there and they want to do a quote-unquote walkthrough, we're at 15 hours in. So not only are the concepts behind something like force science that you mentioned, and we've all been to the force science schools, important to remember, but just fatigue overall. You're going to have somebody that's been up for 12-plus hours. We're not going to give a complicated statement. Yeah. So that is correct. I think that the trend is 72 hours plus. I would say we typically meet with the Rangers and give a voluntary statement if we're going to 3 to 5 days after the incident.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Robert, he was talking about things that happened 10 years ago, and one thing that I've noticed is you've got guys that are still in the business, that were in the business back in the day when they said, you know what, you see how the mindset has evolved, right? Well, if you did the right thing, you don't need no stinking lawyer. And then we're starting to see more of a trend of, okay, you know what, maybe you really do need a lawyer that's showing up. And we're seeing a lot of just that final realization that you just don't know what's going to happen. And as long as you've been practicing law, have you noticed an increased trend on the amount of officers that are getting indicted for use of force situations?
Absolutely. I think you've got a DA's office in a lot of counties that is more concerned with appeasing the media as an elected official or appeasing very specific public interest groups that might cause a ruckus, that threaten to riot, that threaten to burn, that threaten to picket, that threaten to protest at the DA's office or call the media. And they cater to those folks instead of looking at the facts and wanting to understand what the evidence is. And, of course, we have great examples of that we can talk about today from Bell County last year in trial. So I am seeing that. And, of course, I tell all of these officers, call. If I show up, I went to a shooting last week in Killeen. You call, we show up. We figured out that none of our members were involved in actually discharging their weapons, but I was there to help look at their statements, answer their questions, and make them feel better about being witness officers to an officer that did fire. So, I mean, that's an important service that Tmpa does offer our members.
Yeah. Two questions to follow up with that. One, to the listener, watcher, viewer out there, fans, when they are involved in a situation like this, and you've got that, man, look, as a cop, you've been there. You've always got that one salty guy, the older generation, just like you said, where they may be encouraging, like, man, this is bullshit. We know you're good. Like, why do you need? Because sometimes I think the older generation, and Bob, when we had Bob Gorski on, he really nailed it, because back then, the point of view was that when you called an attorney, it was almost offensive, right? It was offensive, like to the administration, like that you don't trust, the situation. Great example of that is that the men and women of Austin Police Department right now, so I've been told, is that they trust their chief. Like they have full faith in Chief Henderson. They don't trust the DA.
Right.
And so you don't know what's going to come down the pipe. So talk about that. And two, we've gotten questions about why we wouldn't assign an attorney.
So I do think there's a distinction. I tell people, look, I'm not doubting that your sergeant, your lieutenant, your commander, your assistant chief, the chief support you. You might love them, they might love you, but this is out of their hands. This is going to go to the ranger, and you might trust the ranger. It's out of their hands. Eventually, it's going to go to a grand jury or a prosecutor, and we all know that grand jury is oftentimes just an easy puppet show for a prosecutor, and they're going to push through whatever they want. So we have to tell people, this is serious. I can tell you the two least favorite type of cop personalities that I represent are, one, the ones that don't listen to you, right? That's the biggest problem. Why are you calling me and asking me for advice if you're not going to take my advice with my 24 plus years of experience? And also the ones that are even worse are the ones that don't think this is a big deal. Like you mentioned, you show up, whether it's a basic internal affairs case or whether it's a critical incident, they think, well, I didn't do anything wrong. This is no big deal. And you've got to take them back to, this is a very big deal. And they look at you oftentimes, or they look at me and they look at my card and they said, criminal lawyer? Well, I don't need a criminal lawyer. I said, well, did you shoot somebody? Well, yeah. Well, then you committed aggravated assault with a deadly weapon.
At a minimum.
Or a murder, right? Or maybe official oppression. The DAs love that term, official oppression. Yep. So you absolutely, what do you want, an administrative lawyer? You want a family law attorney? What do you want? You need a criminal law attorney if you shoot somebody. So you have to get that mindset right, which is, I'm not saying you did anything wrong, but I'm here to protect you, right? We're here to protect you and your rights from minute one. Because if you go give a statement because you don't think you did anything wrong and you end up, later getting charged, I can't take those words out of your mouth. I can't take that statement back. It's set in stone forever. So you've got to call early.
Yeah, I agree.
And now let's clarify that, because we've had legal calls. One of them's a good friend of mine. Calls in for legal, and he's breathing really hard. I'm like, hey, man, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm just doing chest compressions. Well, you know what? Finish the scene first.
Too early.
A little too early there. Or we had one in Temple a couple years back. They're still exchanging shots, and they're calling in on legal. So to all of our fans out there, if you're a member, survive the incident and then give us a call.
Yeah.
I learned to ask that question. I had one in Bexar County years ago that was still had the bad guy. Already shot him once and had him at gunpoint. So I said, hang up, secure the scene, call me in a few minutes.
Yep.
But,
wow. Yeah. That's crazy. Well, yeah, if you want to dive on into some situations that you wanted to bring up, some cliff notes.
I want to walk him through a couple of those that have just really been, so I go out and I still do some recruiting, here and there. And one of the stories that I like to tell is a particular case out of Bastrop County. Young man, and from my recollection of this, Tmpa was out there. We were trying to recruit at that sheriff's office. And the young man decides, after he talks to his father, you know what? I don't need to be part of no dang union or association or nothing like that, and did not sign up with any legal coverage whatsoever. And I believe he was 2 months into his employment.
Very short, very months. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a couple months into his new career, got dispatched out. I believe it was a disturbance call.
It was.
Got dispatched the second time, ended up firing shots and came under a highly politicized prosecution. Of course, his father calls Tmpa in tears, wanting to know if we can, if he signs up real quick, can y'all represent him? Well, it's kind of like not having insurance on your car on Friday, wrecking it on Saturday. Geico's not going to cover your car. So we unfortunately had to say, no, that's not fair to our members that pay consistently every month. And, do you have an attorney you can recommend? And we recommended Robert McCabe, and they hired Robert McCabe. Now, mind you, I have not been able to get Robert drunk enough, and I've been on a golf cart with him a couple times, to tell me the total amount that it cost them. So, if we can break into the alcohol bin here in a little bit, maybe we can get that out of Robert finally. But that's a very unique story, and I really want to talk about that story, because some of the tactics that Robert used during that trial, especially the second trial, are just amazing, and it really illustrates why you need somebody that is skilled. I know a lot of times we get some, not a lot, but from time to time we'll get some feedback from our members. They're like, well, hold on a minute here. I saw Robert McCabe was defending this guy, this guy that shot this person outside this convenience store. That's I dealt with that guy. He was a crook. Well, okay, he was a crook, but there's still the law. And on top of that, you want an attorney that actually knows what they're doing, that's out there practicing it every day, right? So that being said, Robert, I'd really like to talk about that Bastrop story if you have a little bit of time.
Sure. So that deputy was dispatched to a call, and it was a woman was calling 911 from a bathroom, basically saying that her boyfriend and his father were fighting. The call escalated to they're fighting with sledgehammers in the yard.
That's a party.
So we're talking about
that's quickly
pitch black out in the country. He shows up. He's expecting, you've got this priming instinct, right? We learned from force science concepts. He's primed to see these people fighting when he gets there, and he gets there and he sees nothing. It's quiet. No one's in the yard. He gets his rifle out. He posts up behind his car for cover. That's all there is. And he's pointing his gun at the house, and he's with dispatch trying to figure out, why am I not seeing what I'm expecting to see when I arrive? And the woman's on the phone with dispatch, and she's saying, they've got a gun. They're coming to the door. They're coming to the door with a gun. So the door swings open. Well, the woman had told the call taker they put the gun down, and she didn't relay that message to the deputy. Door swings open, and it looks just like a shotgun swinging out because it's this metal bar across the door. Swings open, and this woman steps out, and he shoots and kills her. So shoots an unarmed woman who was a witness, wasn't even a party to this assault, wasn't intoxicated, anything else, gets charged with murder. So we go to trial, and we get a hung jury the first time. We decide we're going to try the case again. We change our strategy. We end up developing a lot of the kind of force science type concepts of perception of what you're going to see, what you expect to see. We were very much unwelcome in Bastrop County for the second trial. I'll tell you how silly it got. They wouldn't let us use their television or their projector. I bought a projector and I bought a screen to use. The security personnel at the courthouse were so disgusted with the prosecution, they were giving us rides in their golf cart to lunch every day and just blowing off the prosecutor, who is not the elected prosecutor. He punted to some special prosecutor, local attorney, to act as prosecutor. We went to trial the second time, got a not guilty verdict. It was fantastic. But it was myself and another attorney named Kristen Jernigan, who's a magistrate judge now, a fantastic attorney. We tried the case twice. We had experts in both trials, but completely different strategy, and it was a very long process. And I can tell it's backbreaking and extremely expensive and very stressful. But in the end, we got a not guilty verdict, and we got the case expunged, and everything is better for him now.
And in between the first trial and the second trial, and I think this really goes to speak to the depths and levels that our attorneys at Tmpa, what they go through to make sure that they can provide the absolute best protection for our members. But during that, in between the first trial and the second trial, that's when you attended the force science training, correct?
I did. It was pretty entertaining. So in between those, I'd gone to the force science, and it was in Austin at the DPS Academy. And interestingly, if you've been to those, they're oftentimes full of Texas Rangers. And the ranger from that area, his name's Brent Barina, so a fine ranger, was in that school with me. And so it was really fun in the second trial because when he goes up to the witness stand, he brought his force science binder and had it up there with him. So I pulled mine out too because I figured he might. And so the prosecutor qualified him as an expert, or tried to, and I kept referring to him as an expert. And when I'd cross-examine him on force science concepts and forced him to agree with me, he finally said, "Quit calling me an expert. I just went to a school." Which is a great line to use in front of the fact finder, that, admitting that you're not an expert when the prosecutor tried to qualify you as one. So that was always fun. And it's always fun to get witnesses to agree with you. And it's funny that I actually made a note of that the bottom line in trial, folks, if you're gonna ask a witness questions until they either agree with you, until you discredit them, or you make them feel or appear uneducated or unprepared. And that's one of the strategies, right? So they qualified him so heavily as an expert, and then I just devalued him so much that he just said, "Quit calling me an expert. I'm not an expert."
So You're no longer on his Christmas card list?
I don't. I drive around Bastrop County now. So.
Yeah. You know, that's just one of the many what I like to call success stories, Tyler. You know, there was another one, and you know, I'm still a deputy in Bell County, and this most recent one I really got upset with. It was a Tmpa police officer that was charged. Did he get charged with murder as well?
He was.
Yep. So
he was charged with manslaughter.
Okay, so charged with manslaughter, and you know the reason why
I was politically motivated too, though.
It was.
Yeah.
It was really quickly that the DA's office out there, and I don't know if Robert knows this. I don't know if I relayed it to him or not, but our member, the officer involved in that case, when he learned that there were going to be charges coming out on him, I had made contact with a friend of mine that was a bail bondsman, and you know that bail bondsman does a lot of good for law enforcement. It really cuts down the costs a lot because he trusts that cops are out there doing the right thing. And so I had it worked out. All this guy had to do was drive himself over to Lampasas County and turn himself in, and he would have been able to get out on bond. And the DA over there would not let that happen. The DA told the Rangers, you need to go pick him up at his residence right now. Even though we had it all worked out for him to be able to, you know, bail out of jail pretty quickly, you know, let the criminal justice system work. But the DA wouldn't let that happen. If that doesn't scream political motivation, I don't know what does.
Yeah.
That's the minute I got the call is when the Rangers were knocking at his door to come out at a warrant, and they weren't going to wait.
Yep. So, and you know
but you had been involved during the critical incident through the whole process.
No, a different attorney was involved and had already given a voluntary statement to the Ranger, had responded to the scene, and I didn't get a call until they had indicted him and were knocking at his door.
Oh, shoot.
So I came in late to the game on this one.
Yep, and that's and it's really a sad deal. You know, and that one, how long did it take that one to get wrapped up?
It was a couple of years. COVID was an issue. The docketing was an issue. We had to ask for a preferential setting because we needed a lot of jurors in that case. We did a jury questionnaire. We had almost 2 days of just jury selection in that case, and then 8 to 9 days of trial additionally. So it was a long process. That case required expert witnesses as well. That entire case was a traffic stop, a short pursuit traffic stop, had the bad guy at gunpoint. Bad guy reaches over at the officer's gun goes off, shoots him in the head, and kills him on video. So you're dealing with basically a homicide that's captured on video and having to explain that. So you can imagine what we had to go through to try to analyze that case. But again, what that entire case, 8-9 days of testimony, all came down to a total of 0.93 seconds of a video, right? And people always like to use phrases like dynamic, rapidly evolving, dangerous situations. Well, rapidly evolving, this is the prime example of what can happen in less than a second.
Yep.
And if you're not seeing it on a fully fast video that's playing, you're just seeing it going, well, I can tell you what happened. You've got to break that down. And what I have to remind people is you're not able to do that as an attorney. You're not able to do that with your member in your office looking at your laptop. You have to get professionals. We had a wonderful forensic video analyst named Robert McFarland out of Colorado. He is a former police officer from California. He is an amazing expert witness, and he broke that video down and just did a bang-up job breaking that thing down frame by frame.
That's cool.
But you're talking about, what's a body worn? You're talking about 100 frames a second?
Yeah.
Most of them, because let's face it, law enforcement agencies, they're cheap.
Yeah.
They don't want to spend the money. And most of them are actually, 30 frames per second? So a lot slower than 100.
Or 30 frames a second, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's 30 frames a second. Our entire case came down to 3 frames.
Yep.
3 frames. And in those 3 frames, you can actually see the suspect grab the top of the officer's gun on the video, but only during those 3 seconds, those 3 frames. Not 3 seconds, 3 frames. 3/30ths.
Damn, that's crazy. 300ths of a second, or 30th. Yeah, I would.
Let's not try to do math.
We're not good at math.
Yeah.
Three frames. The entire case was 3 frames.
Wow.
So, but that was a political prosecution. They had given back part of the evidence to the decedent's family while the trial was pending. The prosecutor flat out told me to my face several months before trial. She said, I don't care what evidence you show me, with the offer's 20 years in prison and it will never change. So for the first time in my entire career, a prosecutor was not interested in the truth. They were only interested in a conviction, no matter what. So when I had the evidence that he'd grabbed the officer's gun, we didn't share it. Because it wasn't going to do any good.
No.
So we went to trial.
And, you can't blame a man for that. I mean, when the prosecutor's telling you that, they have their mind made up, and it makes you wonder, what about that whole part in the CCP that talks about their job is to see justice done? That's...
It's just out the window. It's out the window because they're scared of public reaction.
And what was going, if my memory serves me correctly, God, what's that moron's name out of the DFW area that gets involved in all these police incidents?
The activist?
Yeah. Claims to be an attorney, and I don't know if he really is licensed in Texas or not. Oh.
Anyway.
I can't think of his name to save my life, but I remember he got involved in that one, was calling for, justice, and, you started seeing the whole, no justice, no peace slogans bouncing around. And I think, I'm pretty sure that was something that Henry Garza out there, our DA in Bell County, I'm sure that's something that he was really concerned about was, we don't want to see more George Floyd type riots occurring, there in Bell County. Which is sad because he shouldn't be concerned about that. He should be concerned about justice.
Right.
But your closing argument writes itself on cases like that because you tell people, we love threes, and right, we like ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, red, white, and blue. People like threes. You got to come up with a theme. Well, the theme was easy in this case because you tell the jury you were entitled to a thorough, an accurate, and a transparent prosecution, right? Things that are very reasonable to argue. It has to be thorough, it has to be accurate, it has to be transparent. Yep. The prosecutor was none of those things. In this case, when the Rangers sent off the body camera to get analyzed by the lab, the DPS lab says, well, here it is frame by frame, but we don't analyze it. We don't interpret. Okay? That's not what they needed, someone to interpret what they were seeing. The Rangers didn't hire anybody. Then they said, that's not our job. The DA's office didn't hire anybody. That's not our job. So who had to bring the evidence? How much evidence should I have to bring as the defense attorney? The answer is zero, right? Zero. I had to bring the evidence and bring it to the jury. Do you know how pissed off the jury was because of that? That they're sitting there with this man charged with manslaughter, looking at 20 years, honorably discharged career military police officer, right? Charged with this. And I told the jury, you were entitled. You shouldn't expect, the word is entitled, you were entitled to have the prosecutor represent the evidence fairly, honestly, and completely. Yep. And when they don't do that, my client is entitled to a not guilty verdict. Yeah. Not only did they not prove their case, we disproved their case. Yeah. And they still got up there and just told bald-faced lies, both in opening statement and closing. It was amazing. It was an amazing experience.
That's sad.
They basically asked the jury to engage in guesswork and assumptions and misrepresentations.
But if it's going on in Bell County, it's damn well going on in other counties across the state, which we know the primary ones, Travis, Dallas, Harris, and Bexar counties. And
those are the ones that tend to make the news all the time. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I agree, but that's not cool, man. That's scary, really.
Yeah, it is. Go to an academy and recruit. One of the first things I do is thank them for stepping into a profession that has changed so drastically over the past couple decades.
Well, and if we had politicians that weren't spineless, and those in leadership roles within law enforcement that weren't spineless and egotistical, it would make for a much better environment for this profession, right? But those are things we got to work with and work through, and make this profession what it needs to be, and go back to what it was.
Yep.
Well, and I'll tell you, one of the biggest things that attracted me to Tmpa and their legal plan, and it still does, and it's my biggest selling point to officers when I talk to recruits and I talk to officers, is I say, they will match you with the lawyer for your case. I am not ashamed to tell people, I don't do civil rights cases. I don't do federal work. I don't do civil suits, right? I do administrative work, and I'll do anything criminal. That's what I specialize in. The worst lawyers are the ones that think they can do it all, right? Because they're not good at anything. Right. And I say, match the right lawyer with the right case. And I can tell you this, when prosecutors sit around a table every Friday and the DA says, what are we trying next week? The first question is, what's the case? And the second question is what? Who's the lawyer?
Yeah,
because they know which lawyers go to trial and which lawyers don't. and you need the right lawyer for the right case. And that's absolutely, if you're charged in a critical incident, you've got to have a criminal attorney that goes to trial, because you have to picture yourself in the worst case basis. I'm going to be in trial fighting to stay out of prison, and getting the right lawyer. And Tmpa has never hesitated to assign the right lawyer, a second lawyer, retain expert witnesses on your behalf. The answer's never been no. It's always been, what can we do to support our membership?
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you pointed that out, because I know that there's a misconception on our legal plan out there that, we'll only give 3 hours or, for an admin case. And that is something that's written into our legal plan. That it's not that we're only going to give 3 hours. It's just you're automatically approved for the 3 hours. And if you need more time, let us know.
Right.
And Robert, I'm sure you've made that request before. Have you ever been turned down for more time?
No. And just it's fairness, because there have been plenty of times where I've looked at a statement and it's been 15 minutes of work, right? I'm not going to use up 3.5 hours, but times when it turns into, it starts with one allegation, then it's a second, then it's a fourth. I'll say, Randy, I've got to have more time. No problem. No problem at all, because things do morph and develop. But with critical incidents, they're always full coverage events, right? If you're involved in an on-duty, course and scope critical incident, in custody death, pursuit that ends in a fatality, inmate dies, excited delirium, you shoot somebody, shoot at somebody.
We can't say excited delirium anymore, apparently.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's just California.
Oh, yep.
You may not be aware of that either, but we can talk about that.
Fortunately, I'm my own HR department, so I pretty much say what I want. So, yes, but those, any of those things have always been full coverage events.
And just to clarify, that the critical incident, you don't have to be on duty. You can be off duty, and we've had it many times where an officer's off duty, walking in a gas station, place getting robbed, and they exchange gunfire, and that's something that they had to act on as a peace officer in the state of Texas.
And I'm also going to say this: we don't do a decent job about explaining this too. But if you're a member with this organization and your spouse is involved in a similar situation where it would be course of scope. So if your wife's at a grocery store and she's attacked and she has a use of force situation, you are covered under our legal plan. Several employees went to the director. The director went to the executive director, because there was another snake oil out there at the time that was not even a law enforcement association that was offering legal services like a la carte. And it was just, honestly, was trash. And so we had members that were not jumping ship, but they were having to pay double.
No, they were sold a bill of goods. It wasn't.
So we went to the board of directors and said, hey, this is what we need. And so they did it, and they agreed to it. And so your spouses are covered under our legal plan. I'm not saying that your spouse can go out and get into a bar fight and start shooting rounds off, and we're going to cover that. It's not going to be covered. It's obvious. But our legal plan is, I would put it up next to any legal plan across the country.
Now, one caveat to that: we will not cover the spouse if she or he shoots our member.
Well,
that's actually written in the document.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Good thinking out of that part.
Fair enough. That's fair.
Yeah.
I will say one of the challenges for these critical incidents that are criminal that pop up regularly that people need to be aware of is, you've got prosecutors that conflate and confuse policy violations or best practices with violations of criminal law. And I can't overstate this, because when you're talking about whether or not you are justified in doing something, your justification is covered in Chapter 9 of the Penal Code. Self-defense, deadly force, defense of others, right? Those types of things. What prosecutors will come in and do, and they did it in my trial in Bell County last year, was they'll say, yeah, but he violated the pursuit policy. He wasn't safe in the way he approached the car. He stood too close to the motorist with his gun out, right? And they have people come in and say, look at all these policy violations. So they just basically try to say, well, he's just a bad cop making bad decisions in a high-stress environment. But because they want to take the distraction away from, was he justified in using force, right? Or is there another outside factor that caused this man's death, like him grabbing the officer's gun and causing a sympathetic reflex, right? So I think that is something to be on the alert for, is to say, well, look at all these things that went wrong. But we deal with imperfections all the time, right? Violations of policy, best practices, officer safety issues, those haunt this profession.
Yeah.
But that does not mean that you are not justified in discharging your weapon, defending yourself, or shooting and killing a bad guy.
And it never fails that they never point out the fact that the defendant or the suspect, I guess, in those type of cases, in critical instances, if they would have compliance, Compliance. If they would have complied, more than likely 99% of them would not have happened, and they would not have had force used against them. And they're the ones that put the officers in those situations. But it always goes back to the officer, and they're kind of trying to paint that picture. That's the anti-law enforcement rhetoric.
So that's a great point. And one of the techniques I use in my trials for these is we had video sync. So we have in-car video and body worn. We had this forensically synced down to, frame by frame. We put a counter on there, and then we put the closed captioning on the screen, and then we did a command counter. So command counter at the bottom would just say commands given. Every time he would say, show me your hands, put your hands up, it would count 1, 2, 3. So you could see it go all the way up to 9 times. He asked for compliance and gave compliant commands before the shot went off. So you can see that it's so much more powerful to have that for a jury to see visually than just hear that it was 9 times. Yeah. Because they can count those 9 different times he told him put your hands up.
Yep. That's good stuff, man.
Yeah, and and that just takes us right back to it's important to have an attorney that has experience, has that practice in court, has the experience, knows what to expect during a trial, knows the gamesmanship that's played by some of these politically motivated DAs, and has done the preparation on the front and back end to make sure that you're successful as can be going to court.
Yeah.
And the attitude, everyone has a different attitude. And I'm not trying to say, I'm a big believer in the toolbox, right? You've got to have soft-spoken people that can talk to people. You've got to have hammers in your toolbox. I believe in all of those things. I am not the most patient, kind person, and I don't give a shit, right? My point is I'll go in there. If you are charged, if you are a police officer doing your job and you are charged with a crime, you are in an adversarial process. They are coming for you. They are coming for your freedom. They are coming for your badge, and they're going to try to publicly, permanently ruin you. You are in an adversarial process. You need an adversarial attorney at that point.
Yeah, some prosecutors' offices actually advertise job descriptions for, hey, who wants to come prosecute my police?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Jose Garza.
Travis County.
Yeah. Just throwing it out there.
First one to mind, absolutely.
Yeah. It was Trudy, or what's your name? The girl from New York that's married to the DNA bomb squad. Anyway.
Who has no background in criminal law?
No.
Zero.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Squirrel moment.
Yeah. It ran right across the desk. We had to capture it.
Well, man, do you have any? I mean, you've given a lot of advice, I guess, to our members that are listening. What do you want to leave today with, and telling our members from your stance and your experience, 11 years in this business of representing law enforcement officers across the state? What best advice can Robert McCabe give our listeners out there?
Other than call early, listen to your attorney's advice. The number one thing is be a part of your defense. And it sounds so simple, but I will not be more interested in your defense than you are. If you are not going to put the time into crafting a statement, if you're not going to put the time into printing reports and meeting with me and going over things and helping to be a part of your own defense, I can't help you. Be vested and interested and proactive in defending yourself with your attorney. It is a team effort.
Great advice. Solid advice.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this, a lot of people know Robert and I are friends, but, there was a critical incident in Killeen earlier this week, and Robert doesn't know this individual, but a friend of mine out where I live at, apparently that guy, your client, this person taught that guy his LTC class before he went to law enforcement. And after he gets involved in a critical incident, he calls up this mutual friend of ours. He's like, man, I don't know, should I have done this? Should I have done that? And so forth, so on. And of course, the mutual friend of ours, he's very pro-police. And he says, look, man, do you have legal protection? He says, yeah, I've got Tmpa. And he says, okay, well, have you called him and have you asked for Robert McCabe? And the guy's standing there, and he's like, I talked to his attorney. He pulled his card out. He says, oh, yeah, that's him right there, Robert McCabe. And complete civilian that's just pro-law enforcement looks at him and says, you're good. Go buy ice cream. And I think that's just a testament to you, Robert, and I think it's a testament to the work that, Robert's done, and a lot of our attorneys that represent our members have done. Is the word is not only getting out there within our profession, but then also out there within, the civilian community that, these are the top-notch attorneys that you're going to want should you find yourself in a sticky situation.
Well, and I'll say this, passion does not show discretion.
Correct.
So if you're passionate about your job, I think everybody and anybody can see it.
Yep.
So thank you for coming on, and thank you for your dedication to our members across the state. We always like to end the show with 3 rapid fire questions. The last one really doesn't kind of pertain to you because you've never served in that capacity, but I've got hopes that you'll answer it in a favorable way. So, you ready?
I'm ready.
Did you study?
I'm familiar with the podcast.
Okay, cool. Well, then, what is your favorite line from a cop movie, your favorite cop movie, favorite drink of choice, and your favorite cop car?
2000's Ford Crown Vic.
My man.
Man, yes.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Training Day, 2001, Denzel Washington.
That's awesome.
Best quote from that movie, "This shit's chess, it ain't checkers." And that's consistent with the theme today. When you're charged with a crime, this shit is chess, it ain't checkers.
It's a great way to end this. Yeah. Great point.
And bourbon.
And bourbon.
Is there a particular bourbon?
I've drank Eagle Rare for years until it got hard to get, but there's a lot of bourbons out there in the $40 range that I'll put down. So
$40 range. Okay, well then, my particular brand of choice, Angel's Envy Finished Dry. If you have not tried it, it's a little bit more than $40 a bottle, but if you have not given that a try, you really should.
I can go higher, but I'm a cheap date, John.
Angel's Envy is pretty stiff. Throwing it out there.
All right.
It is.
Oh yeah.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
I didn't know I could bring drinks on the show. We could have been doing that.
We could have been doing that.
We could have.
Yeah.
Yeah, Robert, I'm gonna echo what Tyler said, man. We really appreciate you coming on the show. We cannot explain and express how much we appreciate your passion for our members and what you do for our members. Yep. You've been involved in everything from some of our most crucial, critical incident cases down to, getting criminal trespass, I think, out of Williamson County back during the Chody days. So
that's been lifted.
Has it?
Under the new administration.
Good deal.
We are going to have you on with Brian Johns and some of those guys that went through that debacle when that round 2 kind of gets kicked off. So looking forward to that one.
We'll need at least an hour.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. Well, this about wraps it up. J-Dub, got anything else?
No. Just appreciate you inviting me to be your co-host. Hope I was able to live up to the expectations.
Oh,
I know,
yeah, man. Shit, yeah.
I know I'm no Clint McNair. Men want a beam, and we'll just leave out the rest of that. But appreciate you having me.
Yeah, brother, I appreciate you. Well, you guys take care, stay safe. This about wraps this episode up. God bless you, and as always, may God bless Texas. We're out.